Hello and welcome. This is We Talk Football. Today, I want to talk about Manchester City. In the past, we know they're an awesome team, but the past 11 games, it's been horrendous. It's been a crisis, really. And, they've been catching hands, they've been, catching licks. They're licking their chops right now. They're a wounded animal. They're on their life bed. But lucky for them, We Talk Football and me are here to save the day. Manchester City, Pep, I hope you're listening to this. If you listen to me, your whole team will be revived, and you'll have a better outlook on the season. You might even win the league and the Champions League if you listen. If you don't listen to me, I'm sorry, brother. Sorry to the fans. Sorry to Manchester City. But anyway, that's what I want to talk about today. Manchester City and their recent slump. But before we get into that, please remember to look out for We Talk Football on Facebook at We Talk Football. And also subscribe, like, share, comment wherever you find us. We are on YouTube and Instagram at We Talk Football 24. So today Manchester City, we're going to look at some of the problems that they've been going through and maybe some of the ways that they can, I was joking around earlier, but we're going to look at some of the ways that maybe they might be able to change their fortunes and their season. Let's get into it. As I was saying earlier, Manchester City, man, they are licking their chops, and it's a big slump. I was thinking about this earlier. I don't think I have seen a team, be a team win the league and be this bad the following season in a very, very long time. And to be honest, right, they haven't been all that bad. They are sitting fourth on the table, so they're not too far from the big boys in the top four. They are still in the top four. But they have had a really, really bad season. It's funny because it started off really well. They were top and they had a whole lot of games where they started really well. Erling Haaland was scoring goals. It looks like they made another gem of a signing. Savinho coming in and creating goals, skinning people, putting people on their backs, breaking ankles. But now that seems to have slowed down with the slump. But it's not just them, but it's a whole big issue with Manchester City. And I think the last time we saw a champion defend their title as badly as this, or not even, I don't think it's the defense of their title. Seriously, Manchester City right now, they can't go to go with a gun. They can't do anything. They can't defend anybody. They can't block the sun with shades. They can't block anything. They can't stop anyone. Manchester City. The last time I saw a champion look this bad was the 2020-21 season, and you had Liverpool trying to defend their title, right? And they finished the season in third place with 69 points, whereas in the previous season they got 99 points. Huge drop off. That's like, I think that's 30 points. That's a 30-point swing. But the thing is, with Liverpool that season, right? I'm going to mention a few teams that went through a slump like that. But with Liverpool, the thing is, they had a massive injury. Jordan Pickford smashing into Virgil van Dijk's knee. And Virgil van Dijk was basically out for the season. And even after that injury and he recovered, Virgil van Dijk, he hasn't looked quite the same as before. Now, I know last season he had a good season, and this season he's having an even better season than last. But that Virgil van Dijk was a Ballon d'Or contender. He finished second in the Ballon d'Or that season. Well, the season before he had finished second and then got his knee injured. So, that was an important piece for Liverpool and why they didn't do so well defending their title. But they also had a whole host of other injuries as well. I remember at some point they didn't have anybody. They didn't have any first team defenders, and they had 11 first team injuries to their squad, and that was huge. So it took something as huge as that to derail Liverpool's title challenge. But we saw what they did once they had a fully fit squad. They challenged City a few seasons moving forward after that. And, it took something monumental as big injuries like that to derail a title challenge by Liverpool. Going back a few more seasons, we saw Leicester City finish 13th when they won the league title. They won the league title in 2016, but finished 13th in the 2016-2017 season. But that was because it's just Leicester City, right? They weren't even they were basically not supposed to win the league in 2016. They're not a huge team. They weren't expected going into that season to win the if anyone bet money, good money on Leicester City winning the league title in 2016, trust me, they're still living off the money that they used to make a bet that season. You must be an oracle or something crazy to have seen that coming. And so, like the defense of the league title the following season was seen. Like I think no one expected them to go back to back or not even finishing the top four. So they lost good players. They lost N'Golo Kante that season to Chelsea, and he won the league title with Chelsea, right? And they didn't have the performances that they had the previous season. Jamie Vardy was good, still good, but not as good as the previous season. Mahrez was okay, but I think he wasn't looking as the Mahrez we saw when they won the league title. And obviously his head was, in a different headspace because he was having, chatter about him leaving Leicester City, going to a bigger club. Obviously, it's Leicester City. As I'm saying again, I reiterate, no one saw Leicester City winning the league title, right? And then talking about that season is very interesting as well because Leicester City won the league title in 2016, 2015. Chelsea won it, and they had a bad season that season, which also kind of like that was also another paving of ways where Leicester City won the league title because the champions, Chelsea, were so bad as well. They finished 10th that season. And again, the reason why they didn't do so well in that season, Chelsea defending the league title, was because they had internal issues. We heard of players downing tools. We heard of, players like Eden Hazard, Cesc Fabregas turning on Jose Mourinho. His light, Jose Mourinho, his light does burn bright, but not for long, not for long in teams. And maybe the players were burnt out by his huge demands, his defensive mind, telling players like Hazard to track back. You don't want to do that too much to a player like Hazard. You don't want to, I heard this famous saying, you don't want to put a saddle on a Mustang, really. And Eden Hazard is a Mustang. You have to just let him go. You just have to let him go, do his thing, and So it took. So look, what I'm trying to say is, all those teams and all those seasons took monumental, or in Leicester's case, it was an anomaly for them to win the league title anyway. It took all those big things, injuries to Liverpool, players downing tools at Chelsea, for them to be so bad as defenders of the league title. But we usually see, teams defend the title really well and go to the end. But, you can also think of other teams like Blackburn Rovers when they won it in the 90s. I don't remember where they finished, but definitely not in the top four. They were really low. And, that's another anomaly like Leicester where you win a league title, but you are not expected to win it in the first place. Defending it is like too far, or trying to challenge finishing second or third. Insane. So, we haven't seen a team be this bad in a very, very long time. Sorry. And I think the defense of the title is really bad, but it's not spoken about, like, just as I have said, as one of the worst title defenses in a very, very long time in Premier League history. But another reason for that is because they've won four in a row. There was a treble in an all amongst that. You know, you have the greatest manager of all time in Pep Guardiola. Not in the. I don't think Pep is the greatest Premier League manager, but I do think he's the greatest manager just generally in football history, right? So I think for those reasons, maybe the spotlight isn't highlighted as much, but they are being spoken about a lot in the media. They are under pressure, I think, to do well. I don't think they're under pressure to win the league title. They've won it four in a row, you know, and as I said, a treble in between all that. You know, they've won the league title so much. If you also count the previous years, that's six league titles in 8 years, with a Centurion season in between that as well. So they're not under too much pressure. But I do want to talk about some of the problems that they are facing in this run that they're going through. Um, some of the issues that I think they are, you know, that are facing Manchester City in their run, this horrible nightmare of a run, it's really crushing for Man City people. I'm definitely not, you know, I'm not disappointed. I'm not I'm actually happy about this. Long live the Manchester City tears and misery, you know. But I think some of the problems that they're facing is, of course, firstly, you have to think of Rodri. Rodri just won a Ballon d'Or and he's their best player. He's arguably the best player in the world. For me, he's definitely the best midfielder in the world. He's the best player at Manchester City right now. And that's saying a lot with players like Kevin De Bruyne and Hazard and Erling Haaland. And you have players like Bernardo Silva, Phil Foden. He is the best player, Rodri. Losing him has meant you've kind of stripped the defense and they are quite naked right now because there's nothing really defending them. And I've seen some of the team selections from Pep Guardiola and they've been shocking. I remember looking at the team sheets last week when they played Manchester United in the derby, and they had Phil Foden, Kevin De Bruyne, and Gundogan in midfield. Now that's a very talented and creative midfield, and they are an amazing team. Anyone would love to have that kind of midfield, but you do need someone to protect the defense, man. You do need one or two players just sitting there, you know, tracking back, stopping counterattacks. And I'll tell you why that's very important for a team like Manchester City. When you play like that, when you play Gundogan, who's basically an 8 or a 10, and you play Kevin De Bruyne, who looks, he looks older. He looks older. It looks like he hasn't fully recovered from his injuries from last season. And you have Phil Foden, who's having a very disappointing season for someone who's won the Player of the Year award, right? That's another one who's not doing his bit. But if you're playing a system like that, then you definitely need to have players that are going to be able to run and be physical. People who are going to, you know, put their weight around midfield, especially going against teams that are always looking to counter against Manchester City. Teams that are always going to be looking for spaces to attack and to hurt Manchester City from. And we've seen this a lot when teams get the ball. It's just very easy to cut through Manchester City and go through the spaces because they don't have anyone who's covering those spaces in midfield and for the defense, right? Granted, that's Rodri's job. He's the best player. He's the best six in world football. He's not there right now, but you need to have someone to do that. I actually thought that Pep Guardiola would put John Stones in that position. We have seen Manchester City play John Stones as the six in some games. We did see John Stones play in that position in the treble winning season when they won the treble. I think he played in midfield as well in the Champions League final, alongside Rodri, yeah, and that offers more cover, more protection for the defense, right? I get that, but you do need someone to be there with your creative players, with Gundogan, with Kevin De Bruyne, with Phil Foden to protect the defense. But it always seems like whenever Manchester City concede goals, there's just lots of spaces in midfield and they get through to the defense very, very easily. The teams, opposition teams, get through to the defense very, very easily. They cut Manchester City up, and it never looks like they are, confident of defending their goal, right? That's one problem. Another problem is I think they have players either they look injured, they look tired or old. I think Gundogan, Kevin De Bruyne, they look a little long in the tooth, a bit old now. Maybe they're suffering from some knocks that we may not know of. I do think Kevin De Bruyne is not fully fit, but also he is an aging player. Gundogan left Manchester City when he was in his, I think when he left he was 30, 32, when he went to Barcelona for that one season last season. And he's come back and he's younger. Oh, I thought he was, no, sorry, he's not younger. He's a little bit older. And that's why he's playing like this. And he's being asked to do a job where he has to be a more defensive eight than an offensive eight, or he has to play the six. He can't do that. I remember it's almost like when Arsene Wenger would ask Mikel Arteta when Mikel Arteta was still playing and he was the captain. Arsene Wenger would sometimes ask him to play the six, and we would get licks. We would get pounded at like places like Liverpool at Anfield. I remember we conceded 5 goals, and then we went to Manchester City in the 2013. I'm talking about the 2013-2014 season. We conceded 6 goals at Manchester City, and we conceded 5 goals at Anfield, and that was because Arsene Wenger persisted on playing Mikel Arteta as the 6. You can't do that. So that's, I think it looks exactly the same when you have Gundogan, who's a very technical player. He's the player who's going to move the ball. He's going to provide the assist before the assist and to the goal, right? But he's not going to do a job where he's going to run, defend, break up play, be physical, like a Rice, like a Partey, like a Rodri, like a Zubimendi. All those players like Michael Essien, Makalele, players who did that job, and they were, people were paid to do that job. Gundogan is being paid, but I don't think it's for, doing that. So that's another problem. Defensively, they look awful. I can't stress that enough. I know they've been suffering from injuries. You had a period where you didn't have either John Stones or Ruben Diaz, or both are out. Kyle Walker looks like a shell of himself. He looks like he is in a shell. He's not stopping anybody. As I said, he has the keys to the Manchester City defense. And there's a reason why there were shouts and rumors of him going to Bayern Munich, or back to Sheffield Wednesday, his former team. So now you have players on defense who are also not performing really well. He's another one that looks old. And now you have some of your best players on defense. Josko Guardiola, who's a great player, but he also isn't looking very, very good right now defensively. He's always going to look really nice offensively, but I've always had my doubts with him. I think from when I saw him in the World Cup and Messi did that, to him, spun him around. He was wearing a mask. I bet you now he wishes he hadn't had that mask versus Messi. and he got spun around, broken ankles, and he conceded an assist to Messi. I mean, Messi can do that to anyone, but then I saw that, and I've always felt like he lacks something defensively. He's defensively not fully aware. I don't think Josko Guardiola has the highest IQ as a defender. You know, like you think of defenders who had high IQ, like John Terry. That was smart. I don't think he's got that level of IQ as a defender. And so I think he's got a long way to go. He's got lots to learn. He is young. But those are some of the issues. And let me go back to the thing in midfield. If you're playing a system where you control so much of the ball and you don't allow players or you don't allow teams to have possession of the ball and to make it like, a fair game, an equal game in midfield, then you always have to have someone who's going to protect the defense because you leave yourself exposed, right? So I think those are the main issues for Manchester City. And also, I think this is maybe something else that, not many people are looking at, but I think Pep Guardiola's demeanor and aura isn't very settling. When you're going through something, bad, you want someone or your leaders to look calm and settled, but he doesn't look settled at all. I was talking about licking chops earlier. He literally has chops in his face, in his head, and the way he speaks doesn't sound very, very confident. Earlier on the season, I think it was a loss, and it was at the beginning of this slump, and he said something like maybe this is a chance for someone else to win the title. Things like that. Maybe you might be saying that to motivate your players, but comments like that aren't very encouraging. They don't give your team lots of confidence. And I think as a manager, as the person that your players are going to be looking at to see, okay, what are you going to do? How are you going to be feeling about this? Then your energy is going to translate into your team, and you don't want to do that too much in a bad way. So maybe that can change. I don't know. I'm not praying for it to change. Hey, I'm just here talking about Manchester City. Trust me, I don't want them to come back. I'm haunted by them. Past 2 seasons, we would have been back-to-back champions if it wasn't for that silly bald-headed Pep Guardiola and Manchester City, right? So I'm not praying for anything but their continued demise. Trust me. Now, maybe some of the things they can do, if if they want to bring back their season, I think the first thing that they have to do is watch We Talk Football and subscribe and like our videos, and then look at this specific video, and then maybe I'll give them some tips on how to improve. So step number 2, I think maybe they might want to switch up their system a little bit. I know Pep likes control of midfield, of ball possession, of the entire game, and he wants to pin teams down, and he doesn't want to give them any breathing space. I know he wants to, put foot on their neck and basically choke them the entire game. But I think maybe they could try something like this, right? When I watch Manchester City play, as I've just said, they dominate ball position. They pin you back into your own half, and you basically have very little chances to move forward. But now teams are hurting them because with no midfield engine that can stop play, that can break up play, teams are finding it easy to break into Manchester City's midfield and defense. So maybe what you want to do is take a little step back. And I think you can play a system like that if you have, defenders who can play one-on-one. Like Arsenal in most games they play like that because you can have your midfield and offense really high up the pitch and pressing teams forward. If you have players like Gabriel and Saliba, And you have Jury and Timber who can play one on one. Very good, excellent defenders, great timing, and they work together as a team, right? You have players like Calafiori, and you also have a midfield that has pace and power and strength. You have Declan Rice and you have Thomas Partey protecting the team. Now, if you're Manchester City and you don't have that kind of quality right now, and I'm not saying that they're a bad team, of course not. Like Manchester City right now, we're in the midst of their dynasty and we're living, breathing their air. But if you want to change your fortunes and kind of change the system a little bit, I think I think you might want to play a little further back, drop your defense a little deeper, drop your midfield a little deeper, and in some instances, in some parts of the game, relinquish the control and possession that you have in exchange for a more potent counter-attacking strategy that can help you score more goals, but also be able to defensively protect yourself from conceding goals. And what I mean by that is basketball terms. They play like a half court basketball team where in the NBA, some teams play a style where they take the ball to half court and they pass it around and they pass it around and they look for the open man in a half court system where they don't look to hit you on the transition, right? Or on the counter attack. And they look for a big man to pass it down the block to get points, or maybe they find a 3-point shooter, or they have movement in and around their half court system, right? But Manchester City play exactly like that. They play half pitch football. As I said, they pin your team down. But the problem with that is if teams have a low block, they have like two sets of buses. The defense and the midfield all close together, very little space in between the defense and midfield. If you have teams playing like that and they're playing low, then all you're doing is playing side to side football, half pitch football, like I've said, and you have very little chances to create something on a whim or to create something quickly where defenses haven't set up themselves to stop you. So you need to have a different way of penetrating defenses like that, because if you do that, right, you play a half court, half pitch football basically, then you leave yourself exposed to the counter attack, right? Now, you can also, I'm not saying they have to completely abandon that system because it's quite a good system to dominate teams, to discourage teams from attacking you. Because once, like, if you dominate ball possession that much, you get the ball, you don't know what to do with it. That's what Manchester City does. That's the other part of their system, right? Not just ball possession, but when you as the opposition get the ball, it's very difficult for you to do anything because you haven't had much of the ball. So it's difficult to imagine and do something, right? Anyway, what they can do is look at the Showtime Lakers of the 1970s, 1980s, 1970s, right? Where they had Magic Johnson, who is the greatest point guard of all time. Now, the great thing about Magic Johnson is people always talk about how the Showtime Lakers played on the transition, like counter-attacking basketball, right? But the great thing is, if they needed to play a half-court basketball, they could, because you had Magic Johnson, as I said, 6'9", could look over defenders and play beautiful passes and create chances for his teammates to score points. And you also had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who's probably the greatest center of all time, and he could play down low. Magic would just give him the ball down low on the block, and he would skyhook that. I almost said that B. He would skyhook that ball. That B is that ball. He would skyhook that ball, score points, and they would win. So they could do both. They could play on the transition. They could do half court basketball. Manchester City has to learn to switch up their play. They have to learn how to hit teams on the counter. Not only to create chances and score goals, but also to give your defense time to breathe, protection. Because if you have a lower block for your defense and you have a midfield that's a little bit lower, that's closer to your midfield, that offers a whole lot of protection, a whole lot of breathing. It offers your defense a little, like, they calm down a bit more because I know someone is in front of me protecting me. And then like you will also see a more solidity to your team and your system. And in that case, right, if you have a deeper defense, a deeper midfield, then you build a bit more confidence in your team to say, okay, the defense doesn't have to defend everything by themselves. The midfield is there to help them. And also you have slower players. Gundogan doesn't have to run half the length of the pitch trying to chase people down to stop a goal. Kevin De Bruyne is looking a bit older. He doesn't have to run half the pitch trying to stop people from stopping goals. If you're deeper anyway, it makes your job easier defending. Kyle Walker's job can be easier because he doesn't have to go one-on-one all the time with all the wingers in the Premier League. He can stay and be a bit lower and defend teams a little bit more, right? And I think that offers you a little more protection, more confidence in your defense. And then you can hit teams on the counter. That's the other part of it, because if you have a player like Erling Haaland, who's one of the fastest players, one of the most physical players we've ever seen in the Premier League, then you have a chance to counter-attack teams really, really well. And you can score goals. Erling Haaland scores goals. You have Savinho and Doku beside him, who can fly as well. They are quick on their feet. They are very, very skillful, and they can create chances. You have Jack Grealish, who can be creative. And if you play like that, you can have a system where, players like Phil Foden and Jack Grealish have a little more space now to be creative. And we've seen them do magic, and we've seen them open teams up when they have space, when they have the confidence to do those things, right? So I don't know if Pep is going to watch We Talk Football, but I feel like I've just given them a really great strategy to maybe get out of their slump. Now look at me advising the greatest manager who's in the midst of a dynasty on how to fix his problems. If ever life was so easy. But anyway, hopefully, I do hope they see this. Obviously, that would be amazing. I don't think it'll happen, but that's what I think. Anyway, I've thoroughly enjoyed making this video. I hope you also enjoy watching it. Please remember to look us out everywhere on Facebook at We Talk Football. Also follow us on Instagram and YouTube at We Talk Football 24. And also be on the lookout for our NBA football comparisons. I've enjoyed making those. Last week was Johan Cruyff and Steph Curry, players who changed the game, invariably for the greater good of the game, more technical, more skilled. So I hope you enjoy that. Look forward to what I will have for you this next weekend. I think you will enjoy that too. It's two players that are beloved around the world. People look up to these two players, and you will see what I'm talking about this next weekend. Anyway, leave your comments. Tell us what you think. What do you think of my strategies, the things that I spoke about, the problems at Manchester City, the history of defending champions looking not so great. But you let me know. We Talk Football. Awareness.